I also did send you guys a link. I sent you a link for the Sanskrit names for the Sanskrit names and for the Sanskrit. I sent you an email for the Sanskrit Patanjali Sutras. There's a ton of them that I cross-referenced it, and it looks correct because I know which ones are reputable or not. This one is a good one. So, okay, so today we're going to go over. Okay, the last part is the public speaking part of the class. Now, public speaking, like I was saying before, you can break it down in a bunch of different ways, but teaching is a speaking art in the end. It really is. It's like you can be great at movement, but not so great at speaking. Teaching is speaking. So maybe a display helps a little bit, but it really is a speaking art form. So you want to have a really good opening and a really good close, which we were already just talking about that. This is not a public speech, meaning like you say what you're going to say. So in the body of public speaking, there's often this. There's you say what you're going to say, then you say it, and then you say what you just said. So you go over what you just said. That's a typical format for doing a public speaking of any kind. So you also have like your opening, or some people would call it like your hook, then your body, right? So you have the body of the lecture, which is the hook is the opening. Then you tell them so a hook might be something like, every now and then something comes along and it changes your life for the better, and you know that it is the right way. If you had that thing, would you use it on a regular basis? That thing is yoga. That could be like, let's say, a hook, right? So that would be like for motivation. So it's like a motivational hook. Then you would do the yoga. Then you would say like, this is what I'm going to say. Today we're going to work on forward folds, backward bends, a really vigorous sun salutation, a really strong ab sequence, and then a long stretching ending sequence, followed by zazen meditation, or whatever. Then you would talk them through that whole thing, and then you would go back over. Now this is a traditional public speaking formula. Then you would explain all the things you guys just did, and then you would have your ending, your close. Now, this is not a public speech like that, because we are a instructional movement experience, right? So it's not just a public speech, but it's good to understand speeches in general. So you can use that as an idea that when you're doing your opening, it definitely has an opening, and the yoga class definitely has a closing. That for sure. As far as that public speaking part, that is there. Then there is clear instruction. So clear instruction just means, like you don't say, all right everyone, warrior one. Well, what if they don't know what warrior one is? Right? Because most people don't know the names of the poses. And another big wrench in that pile is, what if warrior one in one lineage, like the Shivananda lineage, is lunging your leg forward with your right leg forward with your left knee on the ground and reaching your arms up with your hands facing forward. But in the Shivananda tradition, it's one way, and then now in the Mysore South Indian style, it's warrior one is lunge your right foot forward, turn your left foot flat, both knees are off the ground and your arms are up, your arms are facing up and your hands are clasped together. So from lineage to lineage, they're different. And in fact, that is a fact. They are different from lineage to lineage. The other thing too, so when you are giving your instructional part of the class, the motivational, instructional, directional section, you want to explain depending on your audience. Now with us, towards the end of class, I might say, like, go into first position, guys. Let's meet in first position. That's totally appropriate for us by the end of next week, right? Because now we already know, hey, this is the first lunge. It's the first standing lunge of the set. And I know that you know that pose. In that context, it would be okay. But not when you're teaching groups of people at, let's say Edge or wherever you are, where they don't know what Warrior 1 or Warrior 2 is. In those cases, you might say the name. Okay, we're gonna start off today in a posture called Warrior 1. Raise your right leg back, lunge your right foot forward, so your right foot is pointing forward, parallel to the side edge of your mat. And then inhale, reach your arms up into a standing lunge, keeping your left foot at the back edge of your mat. Now push down through the outer edge of your left foot and bend your right knee up to 90 degrees if you can. Right, so you're saying like, this is this. You're speaking them through. Keep your right leg bent at 90 degrees. Breathe. Make sure your right foot and your right femur, which is your upper leg bone, because now you're not assuming that they know anatomy, because not everyone knows what the femur bone is, which is your upper leg bone, is parallel from the knee to the right hip to the side edge of your yoga mat. So you're giving a reference point. Okay? That will keep your knee and your right foot in proper alignment for Warrior 1, or let's say crescent, or whatever the pose you're teaching is. Breathe. Reach your arms up. Squeeze your belly in. Keep breathing. Facial expression is calm. Why? Because facial expressions get really tight in yoga, and you're teaching them to be calm under pressure and change. So you want to mention things like that, because yoga is a mood space. So you want to address that. And plus, if people are practicing for decades like this, it's going to actually also wrinkle up their face, right? Which is not good, for especially in Hollywood, this glamorous town that we're in. So it is directional motivational. That's the classic category of public speaking that this is. Directional motivational. Instructional, you could say too, but yeah. So it is a public speech, but it's also you're giving just direction and instruction. Right, so put your right foot here, put your left foot there, extend your arm up, rotate your palms so, bend your right knee. That's direction. You're giving them a direction. Do this, right? So think of it along those lines. Think of your hook. A good little side thing to do in my teaching experience is I really do like teachers that have a good opening and a good closing. You can mess up a lot of stuff in between. I'm living proof to that. But if you have a good opening and a good closing, it's that. Even in dance, in music, it's the same kind of thing in just about everything. You have a great date that ends wrong. How many of you are single here? You guys, most of you are semi-single, right? So, you have a great date, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden it ends just on an awful note. Have you ever had that? And you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that he just, whatever, Huh?
Oh, yeah.
And then that happened and you're like, oh, that was just awful. And then you're like, you can't, it just ruins the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with classes. Okay, same thing with classes. So think about what you're probably more important than anything is your ending, how you end the class. Very, very important. So.
It's like the last feeling.
Yeah, it's the last feeling.
Yeah.
Because I do end my classes differently. Sometimes I end with a clap and then an introduction thing, which I haven't had any bad feedback from that yet. That's more of a personal choice, but that's not really the end of my class. The end of my class is that last namaste. That's the end of class. Then the reason I do like the clapping is it kind of wakes you up a little bit to get you back into your car and get you back into reality, because we're very exposed when we're done doing yoga, and you're going to go back out into the world. And that world out there is a very different experience in this really safe environment in here, right? So I do like that. Tone. The tone of your voice is really important, especially towards the ending of the class. In the beginning, in the opening, it actually needs to be really really important. The middle part, it's not as important because there's music, at that point you can be like, downward dog, reach it up, blah, blah, like it's not as critical, but in the openings and the closings, your tone is important, and your volume. For beginning teachers, the most important thing is keep your volume high enough. It's gotta be high, so the person in the back of the room, and I hear this every new teacher, I'd say 90% of the new teachers, they do not speak loud enough. So speak loud and clear. And then towards the end, you can you can make the tone soft, but the volume loud enough. So like, however you resonate it. It's really important. Okay?
I said that won't be my problem.
No, there's two, actually, Suki, I'm a little concerned about your volume.
It's quiet.
Your volume is low. It needs to be louder. The rest of you are all pretty loud. Actually,
You just naturally that way.
You're naturally lower.
Gentle,
But in this space, you have to speak to the last person in the room, like the farthest one. It's really important.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something you'll work on. And plus, also though, for most of us, when you may have a naturally loud voice, but when you teach yoga, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm teaching yoga, I gotta be spiritual, and then all of a sudden you tone it down. So don't do too much of that. You're a spiritual person because you're a spirit being. But speak loud enough because the students really do need to hear you. Okay, so that's really important. All right? Any questions on what we've gone over? We've covered a lot of topics. What's the homework?
I have a question.
Yeah?
I was wondering, so when we get our certification, we take a test, right? What's the test gonna be like?
It's a written multiple choice test.
Okay, and like.
So it's like on all the topics we cover.
Is it
if
hard?
you're here, I've only had one person fail the test so far.
Okay.
So it's not, but I have had quite a few C's.
Okay.
Like where they really were missing a lot, and I had to tell them like, hey man, I don't know if you read this book. So like, you don't want to get a C in this because you want to be solid in your, like you want to know like, hey, I know this. You know what I mean?
Is it gonna have like things where you like know Sanskrit? Like it's gonna be like
A little
what
bit,
is
but no, not
Trinity?
too much. It's more like stuff in the anatomy book. Put it this way, if you miss a bunch of classes and you don't read any of the books, you'll fail, So like you would fail, but you would be able to take it
So
again.
yoga anatomy is kind of hard to get.
Just
through.
I
I did go
read
through
as
it.
best as you can. Use it as a reference book. It's mainly a reference book. I know how pithy it is.
It's tough to get
Read
through
as
that.
much as you can, but
Okay.
you don't have to read it word for word. Like where it
Try
gets
to
into the
understand
poses, read the part that are the paragraphs, and when it gets into the really detailed poses, scan through those because I know it's too.
Sometimes it gets real technical. And I'm
yeah, it
like,
does.
oh, I'm like, how?
Right? Yeah, I know. But there is some paragraphs in there.
Okay.
Read through all the paragraphs of stuff, and then where it becomes a reference manual to poses. Most of those poses aren't even in my set. Some are though. I would say the ones that are in my set, at least look at those. Because those are. The guy who wrote it is like a true anatomy specialist in yoga. He's a yoga anatomy specialist, not just yoga by himself.
Another question.
Yeah.
Is it you that wrote the test, or is it?
We wrote the test, not just me. Like my staff over the years have written and revised the test.
Okay, so
But it
so
is
you
my
made the
own test, yeah.
And then you're the one that pass or fail us.
Yes.
Basically. Okay. I didn't
Correct.
know if it was like something that.
No, it's not from yoga.
Alliance, yeah, I thought
Yoga
it was.
is not governed by anything.
I
There's
didn't
no
know that.
government, anything. There's
Okay.
just, I'm a Yoga Alliance, my school is a Yoga Alliance school. So it's what's called an RYS.
Yeah.
I am an ERYT, which is like a classification you cannot get anymore. It's what's called an experienced registered yoga teacher, which is the highest that this group has as far as I know of, meaning that I already had 10,000 hours before Yoga Alliance even existed. So when Yoga Alliance came about, I was like, we, the yoga community, was like, who are you guys? Because when I call in, the person answering the phone has less experience than I do. Like we just know, because it was like a college age person, or maybe just out of college, like, so we knew, we were like, who are you guys? So they made a classification called an ERYT. And that was people that had 10,000 hours or more. At the time, Yoga Alliance became about, I think I had 15 or 16,000 hours of teaching experience. And it was documented by, it's how I made a living for like 15 years before Yoga Alliance existed. So what'll happen is, now you can't just sign up, and so when you sign up with Yoga Alliance, you're just registered into a registry. That's all it is. Like your name is in a registry.
Yeah.
But I get a notice that you signed up and used my school, and then I either say like, yes, she did my course, or no, she did not do my course. So you'll get a digital, once you finish the exam and do the class, you'll get a certificate of completion. Okay? Now, that becomes your certificate, and that's usually what you would teach from. Being an RYT, some people demand it, some people don't. There are a lot of schools that don't agree with Yoga Alliance. They don't want to be part of the Yoga Alliance because they just charge us money. That's all it is. I pay money, so my school is in an RYS. There are some standards and stuff, but it's a very loose body. It's not like, and also like for somebody like me, like if I go to school and interview, I don't have to be RYT or whatever. Like I have all these years of teaching experience. I would hire people still that are not RYT teachers because I know people that have 30 years of experience that aren't RYT. It's just one. There was also the California, what was it, CA? I forget. There was a California yoga teachers group, and then there's the Texas Yoga Association, of course, because Texas is like everything. Texas is its own country, so like Texans made their own Texas Yoga Association, and that's its little thing. And maybe in some places in Texas they would say, no, you have to be part of the Texas thing. I don't know how that works, but the biggest one of the world is still that I know of is the RYT. The basic one is the RYT, the Registered Yoga Teacher 200. That's the main one that people look for.
Yeah.
And for insurance may require, I don't know. I'm not sure because I predate all that stuff. But we became a RYS because we felt like, hey, this thing is becoming a real thing. So let's become an RYS. So I have to jump through a few hoops, but not that many because again, like for someone like me, I had over 10,000 hours. Yeah. So it didn't matter. My teachers now are in every place that you could just about imagine. Like all the gyms, like I have teachers in Equinox, I have teachers in Crunch, I have teachers in the YMCA, and I have teachers in LA Fitness as far as this neighborhood is concerned. Amongst that, dance schools, parks, yoga centers. I have teachers in Yoga Works, although Yoga Works has something called a bridge, which means if you're registered through an RYS and you're an RYT, they have something called a bridge program where you do a bridged teacher training, kind of like think of it as like, let's say you're a waiter and you've been working at Fred Siegel's you've been a waiter at Fred Siegel's restaurant. Well, now you're going to Bouchon, some famous French place, and they're like, you know what? We are Bouchon. We want you to learn our method of waiting tables. We know you're a waiter, but we want you to go through this like little course that we have. So there's that too. Again, if it's a Bikram school, we'll go over this a little bit later on as well. Okay. Bikram makes you do his thing because he's Bikram. So
yeah.
He does his own thing, and he only wants you to do that. But that's actually that school is kind of like not as existent as it was before. So they've loosened up a lot of their terms and stuff because he's no longer, I guess, suing people and stuff because teachers were getting sued. So that covers mainly like all the topics that we have. I sent you guys the other information about the Sanskrit stuff, the homework, beats per minute, write out. So it's create a playlist and write out the average beats per minute. Name 3 anatomically incorrect poses and why they're not correct. All right. We're at the halfway. We're now past the halfway point.
Oh my God!
Good work, you guys. Namaste.
I can't believe it.
Isn't that crazy? I'm telling you.
Yes.
It
I
goes
don't
by
like
fast.
it.
I know. It's
No,
really
I
sad,
like
actually.
it.
Well, I did teacher trainings again. I actually did teacher trainings just for the fun of them too. Believe it or
Yeah.
not. Like last year, like I started doing them just because I was like, I miss doing teacher trainings. I kind of missed the like camaraderie and
Yeah.